World.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bruh Meets World.
Your boy Meets World fan cast. I'm Ceej.
I am Tony Coitus.
And you guys, we are back. We are back with a very special guest. But before we get into that very special guest, got a little housekeeping. Tony, how you been? What you up to? What's going on?
I found out that green tea has caffeine in it.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I thought it had caffeine, but I didn't think it was that much. And I've been in a Arizona green tea hyperfixation. And I was like, why am I not sleeping anymore? And it turns out that drinking a lot of green tea after midnight is not.
Yes, it is literally like green tea is caffeinated. For those of you who don't know, I'm saying that because I want you to include this. Like,
I just thought it was such a low amount. It's like
no, green tea is like, honestly, like I don't drink coffee, but I'll drink tea because like coffee, the caffeine in coffee just like gets me up here, but the caffeine in tea is more subtle. It's gonna hit you, but it's still there.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way. As at like 7 p.m. recording this, drinking more green tea.
Have you found like a substitute?
I got a soda stream for Christmas, and I have to say, I'm loving it. I love a fizzy water. There is nothing that feels more refreshing, more luxurious than like fizzy water hitting my mouth. And to be able to make it at home, game changing.
No. I love that. Like, this is like one of those things those conversations where I'm like, we are older.
Yes.
But at the exact same time, I wouldn't change it because you're right. Getting a soda stream. We got my husband a Keurig.
Game changer.
And like I ain't gotta worry about that pot being there all day and like all this other stuff. It's just like a little cup.
I truly wish I got a Keurig. I so regret having a coffee pot because I'm notorious for making way too much coffee. Just single serve. This is all I need.
We got my father-in-law one, and he was like, "What? I just gotta push it down."
The soda stream, bruh, such a game changer because one of the things is that no one ever wants to deliver waters to my apartment because they don't want to bring it upstairs. Yeah. So I'm constantly having to lug large water. Not anymore. I make my own fizzy water. I got my filter. I got my soda stream. Can't tell me shit.
Do you do the flavors?
I have a ginger ale and I have a lime, and it's great.
I didn't even here's the thing. I knew about the lime. I didn't know they do ginger ale. Oh, they
can do every soda flavor there is.
What?
You can just make soda at home.
Dream.
It's amazing.
I know they advance ginger ale.
2024. We do this shit at home.
You have to do everything at home.
You got McDonald's money? Then I guess we eat McDonald's at home.
Can you make that McDonald's Sprite from your soda stream?
I can. I just you know what? You actually can make it like extra bubbly. This is a side conversation. We can have it later. But you can make it so like so full of bubbles and intense. It's like spicy. I love it.
One of my favorite memes is like the idea of someone being like, I just want to go back to like the 16th century and hand a peasant a McDonald's Sprite. Like that.
It would kill him. It would just kill him.
Like
witchcraft.
Like we have a tolerance built up for it. Give that to somebody who hasn't.
Exactly.
No, forget the McDonald's Sprite. I'm bringing back Four Loko. Fuck them.
Ooh, no. Here's the thing. I gotta tell you, Sprite is like, it's simple, it's harmless. May a head explode possibly. You give someone from anyone before 1980 a Four Loko, man, the whole organ's shutting down.
I'm going to jail for murder
immediately.
Okay, let's get back to it.
I have been holding my tongue the entire time we were setting up for this episode to not talk about the Boy Meets World episode because I have so many thoughts, and like I've literally just been racking my brain being like, what can I talk about right now that's not Boy Meets World, because it's all I want to say.
Well, if that's the case, then I will not hold us up. But if you want to talk to us, audience, about things that you have to say about this episode or any episode, you guys have been very active on our socials. You've been reaching out to us on Patreon. Thank you guys again for subscribing to our Patreon and to our YouTube. As we said, you guys help us get over that threshold, so please continue to subscribe. And reach out to us on all the platforms at Bruh Meets World. But if you are eager to talk about this episode, and I am eager to introduce our guest, then I think it's time we just do both of those things right now. You guys, welcome back to the show, Myles Warden.
Thank you.
What's up, Myles?
What's up?
Hey, you are joining us back for this week's episode, The Honeymooners. Are you excited to be back? Where have you been?
I'm so excited to be back. I'm so excited we can talk about shows. Last time I was here, we couldn't mention names of things. I'm excited as a TV person to actually get to talk about TV this time.
Oh, you even got your Boy Meets World shirt?
Oh, yeah, I got my Boy Meets World shirt. We rocking Cory and Topanga, you know.
Love the shirt and love to have you back. As our listeners will know, like you said, you were here talking about the strike last time, and now we get to talk about Boy Meets World, which is a big deal because you have your own connections to some of the writers and producers of Boy Meets World. If you just remind our listeners real fast your connection to the show before we jump in.
Okay, I'm a really big fan. So when I moved to LA, it was about the same time that the reboot Girl Meets World kicked off. So as a fan and just somebody who was trying to pick up all the knowledge of TV I could, I decided to go to one taping. One taping led to two tapings. I met some really cool people there, and then we spoke to some of the cast members, and they were like, "Oh, we want you to come back every week." And that could have been Hollywood talk for all I know, but I took it literally, and I came back every single week. So I went to every single taping of Girl Meets World. Became really big friends with Mark Bluntman, who's my big brother, father figure, mentor. I was just on the phone with him. He says, "What's up?" By the way,
without Mark,
yep.
Yes, Michael Jacobs ended up writing me and my writing partner a letter of recommendation against the ABC program. Back then, he read some of our scripts and we all just clicked, and they've been trying to help us out, and me and the cast and the writers, we've been bonded ever since.
Yeah. And Myles, do you have any history with creating television at all?
I do indeed. Actually, also speaking of the connections, me and Bluntman and Danielle are currently cooking up something with my writing partner right now. So fingers crossed on that. But yeah, so I was also a writer on Act Your Age, which came out not too long ago, and it will be re-airing on Netflix pretty soon, maybe in another month or two. Season 1 will be on Netflix.
Oh, y'all got that Netflix deal?
Got the Netflix, so look out for that. Until then, I believe you can find it if you look for it on Amazon. So if you're fans of TV actresses, legends like Yvette Nicole Brown, Campbell, like Kim Whitley, definitely check that out. It's Living Single meets Golden Girls vibe. So I think everyone will appreciate that as sitcom lovers.
Yeah, I am currently on my Living Single rewatch. So this sounds perfect. Also, who do you have to talk to get a Living Single reboot animated series, whatever it may be? I need it.
Now that's the animated series take on it. That's a smart take. I keep always hearing the rumors about them rejuvenating the original version, but I never heard of animated. That would be dope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to go into the Living Single verse. If someone can make this happen.
That would be
exactly.
Fun.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to talk about Boy Meets World this week, and we are talking about the Honeymooners. This is the movie. Sorry, the movie. This is the episode right after our really big season 7, episode 7, which is where Cory and Topanga got married. As a follow-up to that conversation, you guys, you found the wedding website. One of our listeners went and she did the research, showed us the link to where we actually have a live version of the Cory and Topanga website. You can navigate it, everything like you used to. Were you able to check that out, Tony?
Absolutely. And it's such a time travel back to 1999, to see a website I don't know if it's Angel Fire, I don't know how to describe this website, but just to see such a rudimentary website from that time just really took me back in a weird way. It's like getting on an old Atari again. It's just what is this? Why am I back in time?
It was actually way more advanced than I expected it to be for a 1999 website. I was like, okay.
Well, they had that Disney money, so.
That's true. T, do you want to get into the tell me about it for this episode?
Absolutely. And I just want to throw this out there. This was one of the banned episodes. This episode was removed from syndication. I'm sure you can guess why.
Oh, really?
It's all about Cory and Topanga humping and pumping. So I can see why that would be the case, but I just wanted to remind our viewers that this was one of the ones that was not aired in on Disney Channel.
So glad that you did that. Okay, give us the tell me about it.
Okay. Tell us about it, Cory and Topanga honeymoon, and don't want to leave their newfound paradise, but familiar coconuts make the couple think twice. Tell us about it. Eric is also there, I guess. Shows up to help out his new brother and bride, but only ends up getting eaten alive.
Okay, that very much like this episode was drawn out, but
very much like this episode.
We didn't need the Eric part, but I always love when you put the extra effort.
But that's the point. We didn't need the Eric part. We didn't need it in my song. We didn't need it in the episode.
All right, you guys. This is season 7, episode 8, The Honeymooners. Cory and Topanga begin their new lives as Mr. and Mrs. Matthews. On their honeymoon in a tropical paradise, they meet a nice retired couple and consider relocating permanently. In a subplot, Eric follows them and acts cartoony for some reason. All right, Myles, what is your where you at? Where you
first thoughts, first impressions?
My first thoughts are, I mean, I loved it. Like, it was it was chaotic. Like, you were right, Eric doesn't really need to be there, but he's hilarious as much as he's there. So, like, I appreciated all of it. They wrapped it up really well at the end with the heart and, like, the message at the end. There was a line specifically that, like, really caught me that I appreciated. Everything about it, like, honestly, it was very season 7, too. Like, I don't know. I've been listening to the pod, and I know how you guys feel. And it was very season 7. So you got to take these episodes one by one. I try not to tie them all together, even though I feel like this episode and the prior episode and the one after it are kind of like a trilogy of sorts. But still, I'm a fan. I liked it.
It's so funny that you say that. Hey, I love that you're like, it's a season 7 episode. We got to take it bit by bit. You can't look at it too closely.
Yeah. Don't think too much. Just sit back and enjoy.
Tony, what were your thoughts? Because I have mine, but
you know, I'll say this. I always grew up kind of hating this episode. Yeah, like, I never liked it as a kid. I always thought it was a bad episode. Watching it now, I gotta say, I liked it more than I thought I would. Is it still very season 7? Yes. Does Eric have some like jump the sharkish moments? I think so. Like, my issue with this episode is that it could have been a perfect episode.
Agreed.
Just a few things had been tweaked. If a few things had been changed, I think this could have been an amazing episode. Because like Myles said, I love the plot of like, hey, we're on vacation. Let's stay here forever. But like, what defines paradise? Like, I love that. That's a perfect sitcom theme, and it fits perfectly with the show. I just, you know what? I feel like there was just some moments where Eric was a little too much for me. So we can get into the weeds, but Ceej, what were your impressions?
Everything that you both said, if I'm going to be honest. I liked this episode more than I expected. Tony, last week you told me you were like, oh, this is a terrible episode. So I kind of went into it being like prepared. And honestly, I don't remember much, but I do remember that Eric went with them on their honeymoon and he's like in the background. So I was expecting hijinks. However, the main storyline, I was like, this is good. This is a good lesson. This is some good character acting with our supporting cast. I really liked where we were going. This episode has so much to talk about in terms of Bromance world, in terms of did this hold up, in terms of what are we doing? Like there is a lot to say from that aspect of it, but in terms of the sitcom, in terms of Boy Meets World, and in terms of a season 7 episode, honestly, not that bad.
I really just kind of have like to talk to you guys right off the bat about this opening honeymoon scene.
I felt it felt invasive to me. I'm not gonna lie. Like I know there are probably plenty of fans who love that we got this scene, and to be honest, Cory has been, like he says, he's been waiting for this his entire life. An exaggeration, yes, but I'm sure many of men had felt this way. The excitement and the rush, we gotta talk about Topanga saying, "Hey, there's a such thing as foreplay."
Yes,
Cory
I
going,
that too.
I don't need it.
Topanga says, I might need it. And then Cory said, you had 17 years of it, or something like that.
Yeah, I think, and then he said he had been waiting like 12 years or something crazy. But so one of the things that stuck out to me, like I wrote this down, I was like, this level and that, when you said it was banned, I was like, okay, I get that, because the main takeaway was this episode was peak horniness. Like there was so much overt horniness, like just all over this episode coming from Cory. So like I'm not surprised that they couldn't play it on Disney Channel at all. Yeah.
And you gotta feel bad for Topanga. Like Cory is not putting in the work. He's not taking the time. He doesn't care if the bath is ready. He's jumping in.
Yeah. So are we agreeing that Cory is a jackrabbit? Like Cory was like,
yeah. Well, he said when the cops came in, give us 2 minutes.
That was one of my favorite. It was hilarious though. I'm not gonna lie. Like as crazy as it was, I wrote that down to us. Like when he said, "Hey, you couldn't have waited just 2 minutes," because I mean that's honest. Like, hey, that man, he's been a virgin for his whole life. He been waiting on this night. It wasn't gonna last too much longer. They could have gave him 2 minutes.
You know, I gotta say, I got very uncomfortable both as a child and again during this episode when Topanga got naked.
Yes.
It was weird for me. It was weird for me as a kid too, watching that with like my mom, and it was just ooh, awkward.
There's something weird. Like I'm not so. There's like a whole discussion about Gen Z and whether or not nudity is necessary in storytelling and all this other stuff. And usually I would argue for it. I feel like there is nothing wrong with sexuality and sex scenes in movie and television, specifically when it's called for it. And you could argue that we are talking about a boy who we have grown up with losing his virginity. So I kind of get it, but I also felt like, why are we doing this? This feels like it should be private moment. Like, I don't want to see Danielle like curled up in the sheets, like being like, hey, I have nothing on under this. Now, mind you, I'm also 30 something and I should not want to see a teenage version of Danielle doing this, but I do understand why it's in there, and I personally was like, I could have done without this.
The part for me was the age factor, because I was reverse engineering, like, okay, how old was she when she taped this scene? And they put this in. That part of it was weird to me, but as like a viewer watching it again from his perspective, and like you said, we've been on this journey with him for so long, and he's been so overtly horny for so long. You guys brought up the episode where he just let me see something. Like he was just like. He's been like just wanting this for so bad. So I feel like as an audience, we should get to see the beginning portions of it and whatnot. And so I did appreciate it, but it did hit me weird because I was just like taping wise, logical wise, like how old is she when she was doing this and what's really happening? So logistically, it was weird to me, but as a fan, I was happy for him to have that moment.
Something else I thought was interesting was that both of them brought up other men. Cory was like, I wish Shawn was here. And Topanga said, I love Eric. And so it was just an interesting conversation to have. It's like, hey, we're naked for the first time and we're still not giving each other our complete attention. It was interesting.
That Cory's like, I wish Shawn was here. I was like, all right, the codependency is at max. Because if you are with your girlfriend for the very first time, or your wife for the very first time, you're about to officiate your marriage, and you are thinking, I wish Shawn was here. I feel like there's a problem. I feel like we gotta start, like, we gotta draw a line somewhere. If I was Topanga, I'd be like, I just let you make a fool out of me on my wedding day. I can't even have this moment, but like
that was the true sign that like Shawn is the true love of his life.
At that moment, yeah.
At the end of the day, they were in game.
And that's that, to your point, Myles, that was what I thought about. I was like, if I look at this from the person, very much like I argued last week, if I look at this from the perspective of what all the writers have told us, which is that Cory and Shawn are the main relationship, it makes sense that Cory would bring up Shawn and be like, this is a milestone in my life. Who would I want here? Is it my wife? No. It's my life partner, Shawn.
Yep.
But like, I feel like in order to do that, you have to not really see Topanga as a person.
I didn't say that it's a good observation. I said that it's not.
It just, I mean, it fits the boy we know at this point. Like, is good or bad, like he is who he is, and it makes sense.
You're right.
Honestly, that's what's going to help me get through season 7.
Yeah.
Just accepting Cory for who he is.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of it is like even when we talked about Topanga and be like, the Topanga we know wouldn't do that. Like, I was like, oh no, she hasn't been that Topanga in a while. So the Topanga we know now would accept this. The Cory we know now would behave this way. And that's just what I got to deal with. I ain't got to like it, but for a season 7 episode, I am just taking it like, are you still adhering to the world you've built so far?
And to that point, can I just say, like, 1999, I don't know if you guys remember, like, what was going on in the world during that time, but like, we're talking about the like year of Austin Powers, American Pie, like horniness as a tool for telling a high school story was almost like so tropey and so expected that maybe it was just like so a part of the culture that they weren't questioning it. It's like when you hear someone use the R word in like an 80s movie and you're like, oh, and you're like, well, I guess it was acceptable back then. Maybe, I don't know. Like, you just have to, when you put things within the time frame of when things were released, I guess it can kind of help you look over some of these things that are a little awkward to see now.
I've said this numerous times and I'll say it again, particularly when we are talking about the American Pie of it all.
Yeah.
We also just talked about the website. This is the level of website that we are getting. So internet porn is not there yet. It's all changed. Like the horniness factor, at least as displayed on television, goes down drastically once we introduce internet porn. Because everyone is no longer like on edge, like, oh my God, I saw an ankle. Like Cory, like when Cory is like, I can't do this by myself, which is a hilarious joke for those who know. Once you get internet porn, you're like, oh, you can. Like, that engine by yourself, and she can join in later. You know what I'm saying?
One last thing to say about this scene before we move on. I thought their kissing was very awkward. It was that kind of forced kissing that they had in the bed before the police break in. I was like, there's nothing about this that feels like sexy. It feels like you're kissing your brother.
It didn't feel like a first wife kiss, like, but yeah, it didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we have to admit that they've known each other for like a while now. So I think there probably is some like awkwardness. And also we don't have intimacy coordinators. So I think that there is a possibility of, even if Danielle's not really like undressed under there, it's still like her with Ben in front of everyone that she's known being sexualized. In a way, like in the maximum way she can be sexualized. Sure. So, which in a way that they haven't done with Topanga's character specifically up until this point.
Well, she's married now, so she can now enjoy that type of humor that's been reserved for Rachel.
Exactly.
So the police come in, they get arrested because of Eric's mishap. Eric is there and he is in the hallway and he's like, oh, Cory, how cool is it that we get to go in the paddy wagon or whatever? And I was like, I have to address this as the Bromance world of it all, that like only white kids get to be excited to be arrested.
That was the same thing I was thinking about too. I was like, there's no way this amount of cops show up. Like, it wasn't like it was 1 or 2. It was an outrageous number of cops that showed up, making the scene feel extremely dangerous. And he was still like very excited, like a kid who was going to ride on the back of a fire truck or something. Like, it was so giddy. And that,
I love that you said that, because my question was, there are 2 things. One, Eric is outside the room. So I'm like, did Eric rat on them? Because in this world, like, we understand that they bust up the party downstairs. But how do they know where Cory and Topanga are? And specifically, since Eric is right outside the door, I was like, Eric snitched. Like,
he snitched.
He snitched, and that's why he like they are being interrupted. But when they also come in and they're like, are you Mr. and Mrs. Peterson? No. That's why you're being arrested. I was like, oh yeah, that's fraud. Like that's like you are in big trouble. How like I want to explore the legal system in
Thank you.
No. See, again, that's what you can't do for this episode. Throw away your logic. If you start trying to go down logical rabbit holes, you will get lost and never come back to where we need you to be.
100%. You cannot get lost in the sauce. But I cannot lie and say that I did not think, wow, there was a lot of police officers for an issue that never comes back again. We never hear what the ramifications are, but it's fine. It's Looney Tunes. We're just forgetting about it. We're moving on. I just went
with it. And it's crazy. I didn't even think about the fact that maybe Eric snitched. I was optimistically thinking that he was there. He was going to like warn him like, hey, the cops are coming. And then he realized what was going. So he just got stuck outside. I didn't even think about the other way it could have gone.
To your point, that would be like, all right, so let's just talk about like a little bit, just so everyone knows, this is mainly the majority of the episode is one storyline. So it's like the A storyline. And Eric kind of comes in and out, but he doesn't really get his own storyline. So I'm not going to call it a B storyline. So I feel like we can bring up Eric now. Yeah. And I say that to say, when I look at this, I was like, the whole point of Eric in this episode is to add comic relief to what is somewhat a really heavy, serious, almost afternoon special episode. But like one for married college kids. You know, what is family really? What is paradise really? Wanting to escape from the realities of your world. I get that. So they bring in Eric to make it fun. But to your point, there are ways to bring in Eric that make it fun, that make sense. So had Eric, like when Topanga says, I want to thank Eric. Had Eric burst through the room in that moment, and you know, you're like, what are you doing here? Or like anything like that. And he's like, they're coming for you. You know, something like that. And then the cops come in. That's funny. And it explains Eric being there. And it kind of shows Eric being a responsible big brother, and it making sense of him wanting to join them and being like, I messed up on the wedding and now I need to make up for it. Yep. But for him to just be giddy and standing outside, A, you snitch, B, we all going to jail.
Yeah, there was the excitement should have been lost just a little bit.
I just want to speak on this real fast. Ceej, I agree. I think Eric was there for comedic relief. I think he was also there to de-age a very adult storyline. Here we have two characters fucking for the first time. Very awkward for kids watching with their parents. Let's have Eric like talk to us a spider and call it a bird. Like really childish humor to offset the adult storyline that's going on, which I think was important and strategic and like very like planned by Michael Jacobs or the network somehow. The other thing I just want to say is I think to fix the issue of making Eric make sense is if the cops don't catch Cory and Topanga that night. They go on the honeymoon that's meant for Mr. and Mrs. Peterson. And Eric has to go to ensure that they're able to scam their way through the entire time and have a perfect honeymoon without getting caught. And I think at the end of this is where, you know, maybe Eric gets pulled away by the authorities or something. But at least that would make sense as to why he's there, as to why he's outside his brother's room when he's having sex for the first time. It's weird.
Exactly.
Yeah, if there was any concern for logic, your fixes would have been brilliant. Unfortunately, that was not on the table here today.
If there was any concern for logic, your storyline would be A1.
It would have made a lot of sense.
Where we at?
We're trying to make sense. So it wasn't really important today.
You're right.
I'm going to bring that back when we do these in the future. If there was any room for logic, you on it. But yeah, like to your point, T, I do want to acknowledge what you said. I think is really smart because like even like let's even take it further and say that Eric is there to help them have a good honeymoon. It's not the Petersons because of course you need passports and all this other stuff, but it's their honeymoon and all this other stuff. But when we get back, that's when the cops show up. And they're like, you know, like again, because I like the idea of Cory and Topanga getting away with it. And then the cops come. And because at that point in time, you get some kind of bookend to the storyline for the previous episode. But if you just started off with that, there is no way Cory gets out in time to meet his plane. You know, like what kind of lawyers y'all got on standby? Or because they have Eric, do they just have a lawyer on standby?
I would imagine you'd have to. This dude started multiple fires. Like he's a danger. He gave money to a monkey. He's a liability. I feel like we really missed an opportunity to insert some humor into this show by skipping over the night they spent in jail. Because we find out that Cory spent the night with a man named Sheila in prison. And I just feel like we missed a little window of humor. I don't know if there was like, we have too many new sets or whatever, but it just seemed like that could have been funny to explore.
That could have been a whole episode by itself, honestly.
Yeah, and see, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that if you move it to they get arrested at the end, then your punchline of like even the cop being like, you're gonna spend your next married night with a dude named Sheila, it makes more sense.
Right.
To your point, when we end this scene where Cory and Topanga have gotten arrested, they pick up the entire bed, which I thought was nice that the cops like at least allowed them the decency of just carrying the entire bed instead of like making them walk out naked. They arrive at this place, which I had so many problems with their honeymoon destination because it looked like and kind of references Hawaiian-esque things, but I did notice that it's never explicitly Hawaii. It's just tropical. That does not stop the things that I'm about to say about appropriation and cultural appropriation and the commentary that is made in the background. However, I was like, you are not officially Hawaii, and therefore some of my arguments don't hold up.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I thought the same thing. I thought they were very careful to avoid the destination. I thought it was very interesting that this tropical destination was filled with white people. Maybe it was Hawaii for that reason.
From Ohio.
Yeah, that sounds like Hawaii to me. But I also found it to be very similar in their view of like, I don't know, Polynesian culture.
Correct.
As it was during the what was it? Game show episode that they did where they were like the like that kind of like tribal Polynesian group kid that came out. It just feels like they have an interesting relationship with that culture.
No, I definitely agree, and it definitely gave me those exact same vibes from the game show elements. So I would love to know in their minds where they were at. I don't know if they was waiting on a sponsorship, the name drop, and then it didn't come through, so they kept the name out. What the deal was?
Oh, that's a really good point. Like I didn't think like this is why I wanted you here because I was like, you have behind the scene knowledge of like why some of these decisions may be made. But to me, when I was looking at this, I was like, we already know that Hawaii in general for television has been like a very go-to destination, for shows to go to in general. And a part of me was like, it's the final season, I can understand, but so many people have spoken to us over the last 2 episodes about how they feel like Cory and Topanga deserve more. Like they deserve more fanfare for their wedding. They deserved for it to be a 2-parter. And I look at this and I'm like, why didn't they go to Hawaii? Boy Meets World has never gone to Hawaii. So the idea of sending just 2, because we don't need Eric, but if you need Eric to stay, 3, have 3 people go to Hawaii, do that like what is it called? Synergy thing.
I wonder if the Disney resort was open in Hawaii yet, because I feel like that would have been a great like tie-in commercial, much like they did with the Disney World episode. They would have been able to market something there. You know what's very interesting is that they live in Philadelphia. It makes far more sense for them to go to Aruba or even like Bahamas. Like any of that would be significantly closer than Hawaii.
Then they'd have to cast Black people, and that wasn't going to happen. So
again, only if you're thinking logically, but if not, you can do whatever you want.
All right, that's a really good point. My whole point, and for those of you, is there is something to be said about white people leaving the state, like the mainland, and going somewhere else and being like, this is where they have it figured out. I ain't got to worry about all of the politics that I help participate in. I ain't got to worry about all of the social structures that I benefit from. I can just move to this new warm location and live life high on the hog. Like there's a big problem that we have going on right now with like Mexico and Hawaii and all these other places where people are moving. Americans are
taking
moving.
advantage of the situation that they, like you said, like leaving the situation that they've created here and then taking advantage of the good situation that they have there. Like, oh, I can buy all of these things for 5 bananas or whatever the joke is. It's like everything's super cheap, and then you're going to come there and colonize it and then raise the prices on all of those things so they're no longer going to be cheap. It's like, yeah, it's definitely problematic.
That's the thing that like the problematic part for me is not just like colonialism in general, gentrification in general, all of that really big problem, but it's also the way that we don't respect these cultures when we move there. Like I do feel like the thing that's a little better when you make it Hawaii is that they usually cast someone Hawaiian. You usually have some kind of reverence to Hawaiian culture. But here you just can make ooga booga jokes. You can just say, I got all of this for 5 bananas, as if other economies aren't real and don't have logic behind them. You know, like that's the thing that bothers me is when you do something like this and you A, make it generalized, but B, you even in your generalization, colonialize it, you are taking away the history and the legitimacy of these cultures and their own economy because you've just made up something. And the joke is if you travel anywhere outside the US, their currency isn't real. Okay.
100%. I have more to say about this, but I'm like, I don't know if we want to skip too far ahead, but I definitely want to circle back to what you said about like leaving the country and like taking advantage of another economy. I want to circle back to that later.
Okay, we'll come back to it. All right, so what we're gonna do right now is they go to their hotel room.
They bang. It's the waves crashing.
I'm not gonna lie, like and I'm only hitting on this because I expect people to expect us to acknowledge it. The idea of Cory being like, I don't want to carry you over the threshold, you carry me. As usually I would like call out Cory. I found it funny. I thought it was funny. I thought it was like an interesting, fun approach. He wasn't necessarily like, it wasn't ill-willed. It was just like, no, it was superstitious. It was like, last time I carried you over, cops came. So I ain't about to do it this time.
Yeah. I interpreted it the same way. I think that some people modern women might characterize his behavior as sassy, quote unquote. Sprinkle kind of
sprinkle.
But I saw it as more as your thing that he didn't want it to get mixed up.
Yeah, and then he's not too macho to be like, no, my woman can't care. Like it just fit his personality, like you said. I thought it was funny.
Exactly. And then he said something like ravage me while he's on the bed. Like,
yeah. Which I also appreciated because he's been the other way for so long, like as if he was gonna ravage her or whatever. So like for him to flip it, like I appreciated that flipping, her having the power and control in when it actually occurred. After all of these times he was trying to have the power and the control, it made me appreciate the moments that came before it even better too.
So and can I just say, for all the jokes I made about Cory in the beginning skipping over foreplay and just being a hump it and pump it kind of dude, a 1 minute man, both Cory and Topanga seem like significantly in better attitudes for the rest of the episode. Like they seem so much happier.
I was going to say to you specifically, in this, I knew you were going to step on it, which is why I was like, I noticed that Cory is romantic with Topanga for the first time
in like years.
Forever. And I was like, oh, all it took was finally giving that boy some nookie and some niknik.
He needed that niknik.
He get that niknik, and all of a sudden he's romantic. He's like, we can dance with no music. Like, you know, I hum in your ear. Like, that's all it took for him to start respecting Topanga again. And I thought I was like, that's very telling. It's very
Yeah, I thought they were really sweet together. It was like a noticeable sweetness that had been missing from their relationship. And I was just like, I wish there was more of the sweetness in the wedding episode. Like, I'm glad to have it here, but it's weird that it wasn't kind of incorporated more when they got married.
Yeah, it definitely reminded, like, while I was watching all of those sweet moments, like, okay, this is why we love Cory and Topanga. Like, this is the image and the moments that we remember and the feelings and the sentiment that they share and the bond that they have between each other. Like, this is it right here. Like,
yeah, and then we meet the Nelsons, right? Like you said, we have waves crashing, I guess, which is always television. like euphemism for copulation. And right after we see Topanga, and she meets, we're hitting our roll call, Anne Haney, who plays Mrs. Nelson.
Great character actor. She's been in a ton of shit.
She also was in Mrs. Doubtfire with our Matthew Lawrence. So there's a little like, and yet they share no screen time. So sad.
Matt Lawrence not in this episode.
But the idea of Topanga just talking to another woman, first and foremost, was impressive. Let alone having a conversation as a married woman and being able to gush about just being married. I loved this scene because I loved the expression of showing Topanga just be happy that she's married and that she's in love with her man. And
she also wore him out.
Yeah. And then that leads, I was going to say, that leads me to my second joke where Mrs. Nelson is like, my husband's also sleeping. She's like, did you wear him out? And she goes, in a way. And
yep, like overtime.
Yep.
Great joke.
Absolutely.
So good.
And then we meet the other, I guess what you could say, roll call. This is John Ingle, who plays Mr. Nelson, and he runs into Cory, and he's like, "It's your honeymoon, ain't it?" Like, and I also love like the ideas of the two different versions of someone being like, "You're on your honeymoon."
Mm-hmm.
For the women, she's like, "Oh, you happy?" And you all smiles. I know you on your honeymoon because you still like this man. And then for the man, he's like, "Oh, I know you on your honeymoon because you still getting it."
Yep.
The Nelsons play an important part to the story as they introduce the idea of retiring on the island, staying at this place that they love so much. And they kind of plant the seed for Cory and Topanga. And as the days goes on, they're enjoying their honeymoon. And then Cory has the idea for them to stay. And this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about.
Okay.
Because yes, to everything you guys were saying about gentrification and colonization, especially with like everything that's going on in Hawaii right now, like all of these conversations are very relevant. But there's a third conversation I think that's also equally relevant, which is Americans being like, hey, could we do this easier somewhere else? Which I kind of think is a fair conversation for Cory and Topanga to be like, hey, we could actually afford to live here. I can start a small business. That small business, for whatever reason, takes off. And I am now able to support you in this place that we love. Like, maybe it is not that crazy of a conversation to be like, let's explore this. Like, I know that it's supposed to be this idea of just like they're swept up in like the idea of a vacation, but maybe it's just the 2024 me that's kind of being like, I don't know, they kind of got some good points.
No, it was a lot of good points. I watched the episode with my girlfriend who was very much on board with all of Cory's antics of if we ever mention going to a place she wants to stay there because of, like you said, the 2024 of it all. Like, America does have a lot of things going on or whatever. So like it is very easy to be like, why is everything so hard there? And I could just come here and make things so much easier for myself. Why would I choose the struggle?
I'm not going to say that there isn't, specifically with this storyline. Let's isolate it to where it's just the Nelsons and the Matthews. That storyline in itself, I think it's worthy. I think the idea of Cory being like, hey, all those years at Feeney's class, like we've talked very adamantly about the fact that this show is like college is a must. You must go to college. You will not be successful if you don't. And it pushes college on every single young character. This, when he goes, look, we started a business. We got a small business loan and we are already being able to like take care of ourselves and make a living. Maybe college isn't necessary, at least at this point in time. I don't disagree with that because we're all exploring different pathways. And I even like that they don't make the business the reason that they go back. They actually just go back for family and for connection, and that's important. I like that part of it. I like that the Nelsons are like, look, if we're going to look at it, the Nelsons are an old retired couple. They have earned the right. They are like, look, where we live is cold, and I ain't trying to deal with a cold every day. I'm old. I want to be somewhere where it's nice and warm. I like that as well. It's the surrounding parts of it. It's the ookie and Mookie of it all. It's the we're from Ohio and we are holding an election. Like, and the other party are communists. Like, it's that part that I have a problem with, not Cory and Topanga exploring alternatives to living and, as Cory says, serving the man.
Sure. And you know what? I think the bigger issue, and Myles made a great point that he's like, I kind of see this as a trilogy. And I don't know if you were talking about the getting ready episode before the wedding, and this one.
Yeah.
I think that it's actually like the next episode plays a really big part, because the reason why they're able to even have this conversation is because these two have not talked about next steps. They are clearly just like, hey, we're here, might as well stay. It's not like we have jobs lined up. It's not like we have a place to stay. It's not like we have any thought about what our future goals are, so we can kind of, play it to the wind and do whatever. And obviously this is the storyline that's going to come back when they get back to Philadelphia. But I feel like the fact that they didn't address that at all was interesting, because that's the only reason why they're even able to explore the idea of staying, is because they had no plans for their future as a married couple.
Which is why, to me, the Nelsons are so important. I love the addition of the Nelsons to this episode for two reasons. One, we get more of that intergenerational storytelling and lessons. Like, Cory and Topanga learn lessons from the Nelsons, even though the Nelsons aren't their teachers. They are able to observe alone and understand, like, a life lesson from these two. And since we're always talking about the fact that Cory is, in fact, like, written to be an old Jewish man, it would make sense that he would bond with an old couple on his honeymoon. Like, I like this. They feel believable as Cory and Topanga's friends. The thing is, and even they leave for a reason that makes sense, which is like, hey, they don't say you guys don't have a plan. They say, look, we miss our family. And when Cory's like, but you're going to come back, right? Or Topanga says that. She's like, you know what? We'll see you guys later. It was nice meeting you. That's all you need to know, that these people are going to choose to be around family. I love this part of it, but I do kind of wish we had some sort of conversation on the Nelsons, who have worked and are retiring here and are here not as an escape, but as a reward for a life worth of work, versus Cory, who, even though I support the idea of going and finding a lifestyle that you can afford and sustain without a college education if you don't want to do college. I like that idea, that pathway. I don't like the idea that it is escapism, and they don't really say that. They bring the family in as the reason that they go back, and not the idea that we're trying to escape from.
They ran right up to the issue of, like, them not having it figured out, and like you said, like, it being a reward for the other couple, but not, they weren't there in that journey, that part of their relationship yet. They're not there yet. That's what they could be, and they could be a reward for them later to move to a place like this. But as of now, they have to do things and get life figured out and finish the steps that they're currently in school and all of these things to get to that point. And it seemed like it could have been a good thing for Topanga to bring up or whatever. Like, if in a world where we had maybe more minutes in the episode, or maybe there was a scene in there we don't know that got cut or something, but it does seem to be like that could have been their first, like, marriage conversation to have. Like, hey, now we're in it, and then that doesn't work out. That's not real. Like, but maybe it would have snapped them back to reality too fast, so they didn't want to have that conversation. I don't know.
I think that this episode, you guys had both mentioned it kind of feels season 7. I feel like a reason for that is because some of the storylines and the lessons that are taught this season kind of mirror episodes that we've had in the past. And I couldn't help but to think of season 4, episode 1, You Can't Go Home Again, when Eric is on his road trip and he stops at the rest stop and he's like, I might as well just stay. A guy like you could do well here. And had a very similar, like, message of just like, well, you don't want to settle, or you don't want to give up, or you don't want to leave something behind or run away. Like, it just kind of almost had this kind of very, like, shunning the idea of thinking of a life outside of what was expected of you, in a way that kind of mirrored this lessen the storyline a lot.
And to your point, I love that you said that because I didn't think about home. You can't go home again, but I do think there was it's almost like a repeat in a different way of you're in a new place. You could be mayor of this town. Like you're succeeding so quickly. And in this way, it's not because everyone else is dumb or because like it's for no other reason than this population is small enough and you are a big fish in a small pond. That is the difference. And I think that if we would be able to acknowledge that, even like if Cory had been like, oh, I see what Eric was talking about, or or if Eric's whole thing when they decide to stay is to remind Cory of, like I understand that we're not doing this because at this point in time, they're not expecting people to binge. They're not expecting people to think about what happened in season 4. But if we had just made a through line between season 4 and this episode, I feel like it would elevate it.
Yeah. It work as companion pieces almost. One thing I have to say, I loved the carved coconuts bits. I thought it was a lot of fun. I loved the coconator. I thought Ben was clearly having so much fun being silly and wacky in a way that I actually think doesn't make him annoying. He was probably the least annoying this episode that I found him all season or even this previous season. Like I loved Ben in this episode.
He's the coconut guy and she's Mrs. the coconut guy. And it works. It works on a story level. If we're gonna take what Myles is saying, there is some like suspicion of belief that you have to have that Topanga got a loan. Like they just signed up for a loan, they opened a bank account, all of these stuff. And I'm like, okay, when y'all
had this random hidden talent that has never been displayed. Like all this time he's been like looking for his thing. Meanwhile, he's been able to have this talent.
And not just him, Eric too. Like what was Amy and Alan doing with these boys where they just both can carve coconuts?
Right. They need to be selling these at the store that they own or something. Like what are we doing?
The connection to the produce is good. Like, yep, I love it. But yeah, just
Topanga getting a loan. Did you ever see that Eddie Murphy SNL sketch where like he dresses up as a white man and goes into a bank and they're just giving him money for free? Like she's in a new place. She's buying dresses with bananas. Of course she got approved for a loan.
Yeah.
Of course.
You know what? I think again, this is like it's way too ahead of its time for them to do this. But if we had done something to the line of Arrested Development where she goes, it's shoplifting and I'm white, I think I'll be okay. Like, I think that if Topanga had been like, I walked into the bank and they just gave me money, like, you're like, yes, because that
would have been perfect. Yep.
Lean into it, add a little Seinfeld to this, kind of make them a little shitty, but in a fun way. I'm here for it.
Absolutely. But my whole thing was, y'all going back to the States, what's happening with that loan, baby girl? Like, you can't just return a loan.
Again, throw that logic out.
Yeah, exactly.
Throw that logic out. I do have to say, there are some really well-written things in this episode that I want to point out. One of it being, throughout the entire episode, Cory and Topanga are talking about, oh man, the water tastes like candy. It smells like the air smells sweeter, like everything's better here. And it's not until they start kind of reminiscing about their friends and family that Cory goes, man, it's hot all of a sudden, right? And they don't make a big deal about it, but it just is a perfectly written way of showing that the rose-colored glasses have been taken off and he's kind of seeing the reality of the situation for the first time. And I thought they did it in such an elegant way that usually they would kind of force something or like kind of make it a little too apparent, but I just thought that was really simple and well done.
There were so many subtle, like brilliant lines, and then the tie-in to that line, then to the line at the very end where they're like, "Oh, it was like paradise. That sounds like paradise." And then Cory looked around at everybody and he was like, "Almost," because like this is paradise, being around all my loved ones. And
that's a classic Michael Jacobs moment.
It was sitcom gold. Like, it was such a good closer. Like, it's just there's just so many very well done lines.
And I think that that's kind of my problem with this episode is that, to what Tony was saying earlier, it's so close to being perfect because what you said, when Cory goes, like with the Nelsons are like, hey, the kids made the playoffs. Like we gotta be there. like that whole scene is good, and I get their motivation, and I know why they're doing it, and I understand that no matter how great this place is, there is something about being there for the ones that you love. I got it in that scene. The Eric of it all
I was
is
gonna
what
say,
takes this
dude,
episode.
this dude makes no sense in this episode whatsoever. Like, he doesn't even really do anything to help Cory and Topanga. I think the closest he comes to helping them is getting music to play as they start to dance. But I truly feel that if they had just had music just start playing as they were dancing, it was just like, oh, it's just the magic of our honeymoon. You could have had that same effect without like getting so over the top Looney Tunes with it. And like Eric talking to a spider saying hello bird, I was like, this dude, like they can't decide how dumb to make him. They truly can't.
This is peak Will being inspired by Jim Carrey. Like at this, like we've heard them say that like Jim Carrey was his idol at this point in time. And I feel like all I get from this is Jim Carrey
Ace Ventura.
on Ace Ventura, Jim Carrey in Living Color. Like I'm getting that from Will's performance in this, and it makes me sad because A, I know Will can do better. B, I know the writers can do better. And C, every single scene still works if you remove Eric. So for me, I'm like, why is he here? And you can't tell me that it's because, oh, you need him to like fill his episode requirement, because everyone else, like if it had just been the three of them all episode, I would have like, oh, it's because they needed all three of them to hit their contract requirement. But the fact that everyone else shows up later at the end of the episode and they just get like a quick 5 seconds, I'm like, oh, we could have had Eric there.
And they've mentioned on the podcast that they get paid whether they're in the episode or not at this point.
Yeah, the episode guarantee is monetary. You don't have to be there to get that check. But I do agree, going back to the point you made earlier at the beginning, is that it probably was to balance out the fact that this is very much like a romantic comedy dramedy like episode if you take his elements away. And so and it's also a very horny episode if you take his elements away. So to balance that out for like the younger viewing audience, I think it was the perfect way to just like throw in some crazy zany moments to like almost distract you from the horniness of it all. Or
Myles, we've had a few people on the show that are related to Boy Meets World at this point. And one of the things that they've kind of mentioned is that they all acknowledged how talented Will Friedle was. And at this point, there were certain episodes where they would just be like, Eric does something funny. And it kind of feels like this episode is filled with, now Will just kind of do something funny.
For sure, and I agree. And the thing is, like, I didn't hate it because even though logically it's not necessary and it didn't make logistical sense, but he is so good at it. Like you said, you could see that Jim Carrey, Lucille Ball, like his physical comedy was at its peak. So like I appreciated it so much. Like it was just always funny. If again you throw out the logic and you just like take the bit for the bit, he was so good at it. Like there was a moment when this old lady, he was pretending to be a coconut and the old lady was about to hit him with a hammer, and he stopped pretending to be a hammer and grabbed it and said, how about I crack you open like a coconut? Like it was so fun. Like it was just so many moments where I'm like, yes, this is peak physical humor. Like his little voices he was doing, the bit where he was where he started the music, like he said he was constructing the orchestra. Like how was he an orchestra constructor? Throwing it out the window, we don't care. But him
it was very Bugs Bunny. Yeah,
very Bugs Bunny. So like him conducting the orchestra and then like him like being like it's hot and starting to point it to people and be like you, and then he was messing up the music as he was pointing. It was all very cartoony, like you said, very Bugs Bunny. But like I think they felt like that balance was needed, and also they just wanted to let him rock and shine and like show all the things that he could do.
I feel like, to me, it's not that the episode doesn't need levity, because I wrote down that they needed comic relief in this. I feel like they could have given him either his own storyline, again, like make it to where he's trying to get there to make up for it, to make it up to them. So it's like he's at the airport trying to get on, and then as soon as he gets there and lands, they come back. Or it's some kind of, if I'm going to be honest, right. I guess it's like the best way I can say it. Write a storyline for Eric. Make Eric and make Will have reason to do whatever they're doing. To me, it does feel a little like they loved watching Will do whatever he could. So they just wrote scenes for him to be there. But it starts to feel like Urkel in the later seasons.
Yeah,
you know
for
what I'm
sure.
saying? Like I wrote down. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, if I will say though, if I were like writer watching this with Indy, I would imagine Indy loving the Will stuff. Like I think Eric is written to appease that younger demographic of TGIF. And I think there's a certain kind of kid that would find what Eric did very funny, even if it doesn't make sense from a writing point of view.
But
Exactly.
see, this is interesting to me that you say that, because let's think about this. Boy Meets World has not been trying to target the young audience in quite some time.
You're absolutely right.
Why this episode? Like my whole thing is I could see that if we weren't in college. Like y'all have leveled up. Y'all have said we are not trying to hit that 10-year-old demographic. So if you personally have moved your storytelling from that audience, you can't also say, and now on this particular week, we're trying to go. Again, we've talked about this before. If that's the case, if you want storyline with kids, Morgan is right there. You have Morgan speaking. So we know that she could have had some lines. Have her and Eric have a storyline, whatever it may be. But it's not because you want the children. It's because you just wanted the jokes. You just wanted to see Will perform. That's it.
That's such a great point, because literally last season a baby almost died. Like they were not trying at all to appease that younger demographic, and if they wanted to, why not bring in the baby? This is classic sitcom. You know, a few seasons in, the kids grow up, bring in a little Nikki, bring in a cousin Oliver, bring in Leonardo DiCaprio, the growing pains. It's a classic sitcom move to add in young blood when you want to reach that audience. They are specifically choosing not to do that. So to have episodes where Will gets all Looney Tunesy kind of does feel like it's coming out of nowhere. It feels very jarring. It feels very extreme when they've painted the show to be so serious, especially coming off the heels of season 6, which is so notoriously dark.
I think the the humor, like my favorite lines in this episode are like almost throwaways, and like the humor outside of the Eric of it all, they're all very subtle, very throwaway. Like they don't sit there with the laugh and all of that. So like I just feel like I don't know if it was like a standards and practices thing, because also again like this whole thing is about them having sex and that the after effects, and then them getting swept up in the honeymoon of it all. So like I don't need to know if they need a distraction from all of that or some kind of a balance for other purposes. I don't know.
I can't wait to hear them talk about this episode.
Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting, is because when you watch, like when I watch this now, I do think, oh my God, what is writer going to think about this? What is Will going to think about his performance? Because like they often talk about the, like even the writers who come on our show are like, Will begged us to stop being so silly, and then we wrote something that was even sillier. Like the idea that you said, we are being Bugs Bunny in this. We literally end with Eric in a stew
getting eaten alive by cannibals.
Yeah,
is how this what.
So, but here's the thing: if that's my whole thing is, if that's the case, you know what Looney Tunes had? Structure, storytelling. It made sense. Bugs Bunny didn't do these things for no reason. He had a reason to dress up this way. He had a reason to be in a stew. If we're going to be crazy and weird like this, we have a storyline where they are constantly, this brings the cop back in. Have the cop constantly be chasing Eric, and Eric is in different disguises. So that's why he's over here. That's why he's in a stew pot at the end, because he's hiding from a cop. Like, give me just a little bit of reason.
Can I ask you guys a question?
A little bit.
Would you guys have enjoyed an episode where it was flashing back and forth between Cory and Topanga's honeymoon and Eric in prison because of the wedding issue, like in jail for like a holiday weekend, and him just trying to get through the weekend?
That would have been hilarious.
Because here's the thing, you want to know why that works? Because it's not like Eric's scenes in this don't break away from the main storyline anyway. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the thing. It's like he's already a distraction. So you can't say, oh, if we did that, it would have been drawing to the audience. It's like, and
drawing, but it would have like twisted the logic, because then you're like, well, why is he in jail? How'd they get out? Even though he started it, they participated. So it's like, it's a whole logical thing. But if you just pretend that they never went to jail, then you don't have to think about any of that. Once you put one person in jail, it's really messy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm loving it. I can't say that I don't see a world in which they could tell the exact same story in a different way. Or again, as you were saying, the comedy that's really hitting are like Ben doing his little voices with the coconut, like having like that little thing that they do in sitcoms where he's been there for like 5 seconds and he already has an enemy, someone who's like a competing coconut stand or whatever. Like that's classic sitcom comedy that we would enjoy. If we need to make this lighter, I feel like there's a way to do it that's still sitcom, that's still fun, that's still zany, and we get like, we see their lives there. We learn a little bit more about the community.
And I would, to your point, I will say that, and like I was kind of saying this last episode, I feel like Cory and Topanga deserve more. Throughout the entire wedding episode, Topanga is hardly at any point the center of attention or the center of the storyline. So to have an episode of just Cory and Topanga, almost like a bottle episode, it would have been really interesting to see what that would have been like to have those two together.
Yeah. I want to say, no one acknowledges the fact that it seems like they extended their trip. Does it not? Because at first they were like, oh, we're going to stay a little longer. It's been 6 days. Then when they get there, Feeney's like, you've been here for 12 days.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that honeymoons can't last for 12 days. Mine lasted 21. I'm saying no one acknowledged the fact that they stayed longer.
Yeah. Well, it's not like they have jobs to come back to. It's not like they have responsibilities. Like,
right.
I mean, yeah, they have school, but it's college. Like, you don't really got to do anything but pass the test, if we being real. You don't got to go to all them classes in college.
But they would just fail you for missing days in college.
Like, here's the thing. You're right. Here's the thing. I think we should all acknowledge they ain't paying for college, so they like, I don't understand the problem. You miss a few classes, you take it again.
Right.
Back when like a semester was like $300. Could you imagine?
Now that's how much a Sprite is. Okay, but they come back and everyone's there. Everyone's happy to see them.
By the way, Angela looks
amazing.
Looks amazing.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was like, can we just get a whole episode of her just looking like this? Because what is happening over here? Like, she looked amazing.
I love that you said it, and it's in my notes, and all three of us looked at Angela and said, yeah!
Like, I don't know if they had like a different makeup. I don't know what it was.
Thank you.
Man, I was like, okay, like we've been missing her this whole time. She should have been popping up in the honeymoon looking like this instead of Aaron.
Exactly.
Well, we need more of
that. She looked amazing this episode. And to your point, I don't know who did hair and makeup this week, but they were on it. I loved it.
They came through.
But we come and the family, like they're back. They're like, hey, and they just kind of let us know that next week we're going back to our sitcom format. We gonna be introducing the show to Cory and Topanga, the married couple.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, Myles, it ends on the note of it sounds like paradise almost. And I do think that was a good way to end the episode, and a very Michael Jacobs moment, to your point, T. Okay, so you guys, is there anything else you want to say about this episode?
Anything else I want to say about this episode? I don't think so. I think we covered everything.
Myles, anything else you got?
Yeah, we hit all my notes, man.
Okay, so that said, you get to choose your bruh moment. It's not if you have one. Which is the one you would like to choose?
I feel like I'm going up to the giant wheel and Wheel of Fortune spinning just to see which one it lands on.
I'll take problematic for 500.
I'm wondering which one y'all gonna choose. I'm trying to choose the opposite. Like, wait, which one's gonna be on the board still when I get up to pick?
All right.
Who's gonna go first?
You go first. You let our guest go first.
Okay, I'm gonna pick. I mean, somebody probably else already had this down too, but it was mentioned earlier when he said I went to jail and spent the night with a guy named Sheila.
Yeah,
it rubbed me the wrong way for so many reasons. Because first of all, I didn't even like find it funny.
Yep.
Yeah,
there were so many amazing jokes in here. So like, no shade to whoever wrote it. It's such a good, so many funny moments. But that line in particular, I was like, there's no specificity in the joke, so I don't know what you're saying by this. Like, is it a trans person in jail? Is it a like what is the? Do you just turn into a man, a woman? Like I don't.
Is it a boy named Ashley? Like, is that the joke? Like, I don't get it.
I just didn't get the joke or what they were trying to say, and whatever they were trying to say, it felt like it was wrong or cruel. So I just didn't appreciate it. I could have did without it. It didn't. It wasn't. It didn't go well for me.
I'm gonna spin the wheel and I'm gonna land on Eric being excited to be arrested. This is a privilege that we are not afforded in any way, to be excited to ride the paddy wagon. I'm glad he was excited. That sentiment is not shared amongst me or the Three Strike community that this was released to.
I'm not gonna lie. This was hard because I feel like there are so many good nominees for this award today, but I'm going to go with the naming of the people in the community, Uki and Mookie, and like all of those things. Like I felt like that, like if someone even would have been like, your name is Karen, like it would have at least made it a little less, but like naming them that, kind of making fun of tropical culture in this way, like that whole idea, it was just a step too far for me. I can get behind just about anything else, but like that, I was like, we didn't have to do this.
You know what's interesting about that is that we tied this episode in relation to 401. You Can't Go Home Again, and that was Writer Strong's exact opinion about how that episode betrayed the so-called country bumpkins, or the country folk of that episode. It's almost as if Boy Meets World can't teach a lesson about outside cultures or traveling outside of Philadelphia without punching down in some way. And so it's interesting to see that mirrored.
Speaking of Philadelphia, he says, so I thought this was so interesting because he goes, he says something about like, do you want to go back? They're probably, sanitation is probably on strike right now. And I looked it up because I was like, was there a strike in Philadelphia around this time? There was a teacher's strike, but I didn't see anything on sanitation. So like if you are aware, if you live in Philly and you know of what Cory was talking about in particular, please put it. But I just thought that was a weird thing to include, and then for there not to be anything directly, or maybe like, you know what? I looked in Philadelphia. Maybe it was LA that there was a strike. And
I was gonna say it may have been here. I also just remember maybe it was of the time too, but being in like movies and TV shows in that era where like sanitation workers would just be on strike. I don't know if they were striking more often, or like if that was the group that was known to strike, so that was just who they used. But I do remember in multiple TV shows and movies, the
sanitation and Living Single. To your point, there's a whole storyline. So yeah,
I've seen it in a few too. But I will also say that Cory is not a homeowner. This motherfucker lives on a college dorm. What does he care about a sanitation strike?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I just want to say I'm surprised that I mean there was somebody to choose from, so not too surprised. But also we didn't choose the moment where he gets cooked at the end and eaten.
Cannibals
didn't make the top
10 more minutes. What do you mean? Then what?
See, but that to your point, at that point in time, we're Bugs Bunny in that particular scene,
and that's literally another thing that they did to Bugs Bunny. Like so like it was
in that realm, we're Bugs Bunny, and I'm like, anything that's happening here, we've already just. At this point in time is 1999, so we've already river danced all over whatever culture this is supposed to be. So I wasn't as protective because if anything, I'm like, at least it's over.
and yeah, it says so much about the episode that there's legit hints of cannibalism thrown into the story, and we're not even mentioning it. It's not even coming up in conversation. Like this episode is all over the place.
All over, because like the moment before it was like a classic sitcom gold moment, and then like it didn't end it there. They decided to do the extra beat.
If they had came back with just the music and the credits, perfect end to the episode. No one would have complained.
Not a complaint ever.
So speaking of this episode being all over the place, what grade are you giving this episode? We will start with you, Myles.
As crazy as it was, I'm still giving it a B. Like at the end was just sitcom gold, and like they wrapped it all up. Again, there were so many amazing jokes, the subtlety of the humor, it was just great. And then if you just take it on face value for like the greatness that Will was giving us with the physical comedy, That was amazing. The logic was a little bit all over the place, so that's the reason for the bump down. Otherwise, like, yeah, I really appreciate it. I loved it.
I agree across the board. I'm gonna give this episode a B minus. But yeah, I it was a little zany at moments, but the Cory and Topanga of it, this is probably my favorite Cory and Topanga episode I've had, and I can't remember. Like
Yeah.
season 5, since before Lauren, maybe. Like I don't know that I've liked them as a couple as much as I have in this episode. So I feel like that goes a long way.
For them, it was great to see Danielle, like you said, have her moments too by herself and with the other actress. Like we hadn't seen her interact like that, so like get her POV on things. That was really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as much as I loved everything that you guys talked about, like I actually genuinely enjoyed this episode. And especially compared to like some of the other episodes that we've been getting, I do think that I personally can't overlook the disrespecting of the culture. I can't overlook kind of like the uncomfortableness of the beginning of the episode and the fact that Eric's storyline doesn't feel like it was thought out. So I'm gonna give it a C plus, but I don't want it to like that's like my grade. I do not want people to think that I didn't enjoy this episode because I thoroughly did. And it's actually maybe it was because TC told me it was a terrible episode that I'm able to like look at it differently. But I looked at this and I was pleasantly surprised in what I got.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Myles, we have come to the part of the show where we do our homework. You have anything that you want to promote, anything that you want to give to our audience as homework? What you got? What you come with?
Ooh, I just want to tell everybody now that I can, and I couldn't talk about it before. Go watch and find Act Your Age. It's a funny sitcom. If you love TGIF shows, again, Golden Girls, Living Single. It was created by an amazing woman named Allison Faust who worked on My Wife and Kids and Everybody Hates Chris. So many favorite shows that you love. So, like, if you love any of those things I mentioned, go find Act Your Age, and it'll be on Netflix soon. But right now, you can probably just Google it or find it on Amazon. Please go watch it and run those streams up.
I'm
I
so
wrote
excited.
episodes, so watch episode 8 and 11 especially, so I can get those 0.0001 cents check.
You may be able to buy a coconut.
Maybe, or a Sprite.
Exactly. Tony, what's your homework?
I am going to throw out the Netflix documentary, The Greatest Night in Pop. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It is a documentary detailing the creation of the We Are the World song that Quincy Jones, Lionel Richie, and Michael Jackson put together the night of the American Music Awards. So, basically, the documentary follows the kind of journey. I think Harry Belafonte was the first one who came up with this idea, but all of these Black celebrities banding together being like, hey, you know, they're doing things in the UK to help Africa, but we aren't doing anything. We should do something. And how quickly it just blew up and grew, and how they were able to get the biggest names of entertainment, and how they were able to book them all, and how they were able to like work out everyone's schedule, because Lionel Richie was actually hosting the American Music Awards that night. So he had to host and then show up to We Are the World and sing. And it's so detailed, and it's such a great behind the scenes view of how just the recording process, being able to see all of these incredible singers, Tina Turner, Bruce Springsteen, you know, Michael Jackson, just everyone just shooting the shit, just like making each other laugh. Like Huey Lewis being given Prince's solo because Prince didn't show up last minute, and him having to sing after Michael Jackson and feeling nervous about it. Like so many cool behind the scenes stories that from like a pop culture lover, it's such like a great snapshot to like one of the greatest moments in rock and roll history. So yeah, The Greatest Night in Pop, it's on Netflix, and I just highly recommend it. It's a great documentary.
I love that. That's very interesting. Even like some of the things you were saying, having to replace Prince is not something I would want the way to do it.
So funny you mentioned. I didn't know that doc existed, but I saw online today someone mentioned that he pulled out because he just thought that it was like too much going on or something. I saw a very small snippet of something, and I was like, why is this random information floating around about this old thing that happened a long time ago? But now that makes sense. So I'm gonna definitely go check that out.
Yeah, they had one night to record it. They were literally there till 6 a.m. after the music awards, and they waited all night for Prince to show up, and they finally realized he wasn't coming. And yeah, Great. You can check out the documentary. It gets into it, but yeah, it's really interesting.
Prince is a diva we don't talk about enough.
I
talk
want
about
the Prince biopic. I know everyone's excited about the MJ biopic, but we have Jackson's American Dream. I don't need another one. I want to see the Prince biopic.
I feel like if they did a Prince biopic, Prince himself would come back from the grave and pimp slap whoever had the audacity.
Yeah. We still afraid of that man, even though he's not here right now. That's why he's not gonna get that movie. It's not he's not clearing the rights for none of that from the grave.
I love the idea that no, it probably is in his will somewhere. There's you lifetime better not even try.
Yeah.
Okay. My homework this week is a movie. This episode should be coming out the week of Valentine's Day. We just had our honeymoon episode. I am going to talk about the movie Lisa Frankenstein. I had the privilege of seeing a screening early, and it has just come out by the time this episode comes out. And I had so much fun. This movie is it reminds me of the accumulation of all things 80s, but I don't know how to describe it other than much like the name Lisa Frankenstein, where it's Lisa Frank and the Frankenstein tale. It is a mashup of something like Heathers and 16 Candles. It just it's constantly putting these two really 80s love story things, but also that 80s dark humor, and it marries it so well. It was really fun to watch. It was really good performances, and the idea alone of just constantly ping-ponging back and forth between that 80s Tim Burton style and the John Hughes style of a movie, those are the two lanes that you got if you were a teen in the 80s, and that's exactly what this movie tries to be. And I think it rides the line perfectly, and it also is an updated tale of Frankenstein that makes sense. So yeah, anyway, I'm loving these new interpretations and new ideas that we are kind of bringing to the forefront. A few weeks ago I did Poor Things, and
I was gonna say that there are lots of Frankenstein moments going on.
We're getting it. You know what? I heard that Universal is planning on making a whole theme park area about their monsters
in Orlando. Yeah, their new world. Yeah,
I can see them being hey, as long as you getting our name out there, if you got a good Frankenstein idea, go ahead and make it. If you got a good,
I think Frankenstein
universe that they were supposed to make. I think it was originally supposed to kick off with a Frankenstein movie 5 or 6 years ago or something, but
that universe fell apart quicker than the DCU. It fell apart so fast. But I do think that Frankenstein is past the 100-year copyright. I think anyone can just make a Frankenstein movie. I think it's like Winnie the Pooh. Anyone can jump in.
That makes sense, actually. So either way, that's another thing. Really quickly, the thing about Frankenstein is not only is it one of the first horror movies and books and stories and all this other stuff, it was written by a woman, and it kind of launched off all of these things. And the idea of bringing that story back to a woman telling this story and a female lens of creating the perfect man, or why you would want to create your own companion. Again, it's really fun. I like Lisa Frankenstein. I think everyone should go see it. That's my homework. Okay. Thank you, Myles, so much for joining us again. We look forward to watching your show. We look forward to speaking to you once again. We appreciate all the time that you're willing to spend with us and your insider information for this episode.
Myles, where can our listeners find you? How can they support you going forward? Where can they link up?
Find me on every social media app that you can find. I will not mention the site formerly known as The Other Thing, but I'm still there hanging around, but I'm on all the new things as well. So just look up @ReallyMighty, ReallyMighty, and you will be able to find me on all your social media platforms.
Really mad at it. Thank you so much, Myles. And for you guys, if you have any commentary on this week's episode, or if you want to support, make sure that you are reaching out to us at bromance at all the places like Myles is. And you can also email us at bromance@gmail.com. you guys continue to support our Patreon. We appreciate it. You guys have been growing those numbers up. Same thing with YouTube. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. We appreciate those as well. Don't forget to give us a rating. And as always, we have merch. So go ahead.
We have new merch because of our Paul Meets World stuff is released.
Yes, those things were really fun. We had the conversation about Dog Meets World. I saw an opportunity, I took it, and honestly, you guys are rewarding it. So go ahead and check out that Paul Meets World stuff. Get to see, I've been calling them Claw Hunter.
So adorable. I want to see this show in real life. I have to have it.
Exactly. All right, you guys, until then, remember to dream.
Remember to try.
Do good.
Yay!
Okay.
I didn't know if I was going to get the privilege to close it. I love it.
Yeah. Always.
Do some damn good. Later, bros.
Later, bros.
This episode of Prom Meets World was produced by Ceej and edited by Tony Curtis. Prom Meets World is a 2 free tokens media production.
Bye.
When this boy meets world.